Welcome back. I'm joined by Dr. Michael Bonner as we discuss architecture. Clearly a passion of yours, Mr. Bonner, because you've written a beautiful journal piece on the C2C Journal about architecture. So let's discuss what we see in Canada. Could you name certain landmarks that you think, evoke positive emotions that are really just truly beautiful buildings or landmarks?
Well, I would start with Parliament. I mean, this is the heart of our political life. It's where the House of Commons and the Senate meet. It's full of symbols of our country and so forth, and it's built in a very grand, monumental neo-Gothic style. That style set the tone within official Ottawa for a very long time. Until the mid 20th century. It's paralleled in many other provincial buildings and legislatures and so forth. There's sometimes a blend of classical styles as well that you can see in the very elegant legislature in Edmonton, as well as in the other prairie provinces in Saskatoon and Winnipeg. Those are very attractive buildings that I think could sort of uh, set a standard for an architectural revival. But of course, everybody probably has, if you go to a place like Quebec City, or to Montreal, you can find much older buildings from an even
Mm.
earlier period, which are also inspiring, built on a much smaller human scale, and there are many to choose from. The sort of chateau style, that sort of like French chateau style that you find in the um, Chateau Laurier
Right.
in Ottawa, as well as the name isn't coming to me.
The
The sort
Chateau
of city.
Frontenac in Quebec City.
Exactly, and then the old railway hotels like the
Oh,
Banff
yes.
Springs.
Oh,
Those are
Banff
magnificent.
Springs and the Royal York in Toronto. Oh, yes, they're beautiful buildings, aren't they? You exit
Exactly.
Union Station, downtown Toronto, and it's like, ta-da!
Yeah, that's and those that is a good example. The Royal York Hotel was built in the middle of the Great Depression. If they can
Mm.
do that, then why can't we do that? As for hideous buildings, probably I think surveys suggest that the crystal attached to the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto is still Canadians' most hated
Oh, yes.
building.
I spent
And
many time there with my young children, and not only does it look strange as you approach the building, but once inside, talk about dysfunctional. There's some walls that would come at you at 45-degree angles, and I'd have to like corral my children, get away from that wall, and inevitably somebody would get a bruise on their head because, well, I didn't know that wall wasn't going to be straight, mummy.
yeah, well, yeah, my kids have had similar experiences there too. And speaking of walls, we were all, I think, sold a bill of goods on that structure. Everybody thought it would actually be a crystal, but it isn't a
Mm.
crystal. It's basically a gyprock on the inside, with steel and plastic on the outside, with very few windows.
Yes.
Um, I was certainly under the impression when it was built that it would be more transparent, and that's certainly how it was drawn. So it wasn't at all as advertised either. Apart from that, there was a huge architectural movement beginning at the in the '60s for the Canadian centenary, and there are some interesting results there, including the brutalist Ontario Science Center. That
Oh, yes.
there's a certain appeal to that. It almost felt sort of cozy inside, despite its gigantic size. But for the most part, most of the buildings that were put up then um, have not aged well. Simon Fraser University is a great example. It's kind of like it's like being inside the Death Star or something. It's sort of dystopian, gray, and since it's always raining out there, it just makes it even more depressing than it normally would be. I'd like to think that we've sort of moved beyond that by now, but new buildings that go up, they're still not necessarily brutalist, but this sort of glass and steel
Hmm.
uh, stuff is sort of unimaginative and maybe less dystopian, but hardly comfortable.
Okay, well, we're going to pick up this discussion when we return back because I want to know why. Why is ugly architecture allowed in society? We'll be right back.